We're back this week, and we surprised Dave, our co-host, with like, "Hey, you're going to be our main guest this week."
He's very thrilled.
Yeah. He's like, "Oh man." So we didn't tell him, and we're just like, "You're going to be in the hot seat, and we're going to interview you." And one of the reasons, so Kate actually was like, "We need to just talk to Dave about his fitness a little bit." And I was like, "You're not wrong. I've had over the last probably 2 or 3 weeks, probably like 5 people comment or ask me a little bit about like what Dave did for training and then just like his history and things like that. And
they want to be like Dave until they realize he's lifted for like 35 years.
Well, particularly they saw him, he was doing some like 10-5-10 drills and things like that. And they're like, that dude is really big and strong and moves like a cat. Like, it was really cool. They were just like, people's eyes were popping out. I think Dave, we've talked on old podcasts a little bit about like, you know, you grew up playing football and we know a little bit about that.
I don't know if like, let's just recap.
Yeah, so like what
can kind of have an idea.
What his like training history is and sort of like what's led up to now, and then the types of things you do now to maintain some of the athletic qualities that you've possessed and still maintain. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I think most kids, you're just kind of running around like, you know, late 80s kids, early 90s, you know, riding your bikes, just playing in the neighborhood. You know, a bunch of friends grew up in the area with, and you start to get into organized sports. Like I played soccer when I was younger, rec leagues, things like that, basketball, the usual stuff. I was the youngest of 4, so, you know, I have a brother and 2 older sisters, and, you know, would go to their games when I was younger and meet with friends there. My sister, you know, did gymnastics for a little bit when I was younger, so I feel like I was always like practicing cartwheels and stuff, doing, you know, just getting exposed to that stuff from an early age. And then, you know, I probably, other than kind of some early basketball and soccer stuff, I got into football like 4th grade.
Okay.
You know, and they still had like Vince Lombardi or Papa Warner, whatever the leagues they call these days. And it was, I don't know how they work it now. Probably depends on the state and the town or city, but like it was full contact padded football at 4th grade. Yeah. So I started playing that and, you know, continued to play basketball and did some wrestling, played football as well. I got into lacrosse too and track. And then when you're younger, until you get to high school, you have the option to play more sports at that time because they kind of break up some of the winter seasons. Whereas you get to high school, the seasons get longer and they break things up. At least they did.
You got to practice for it longer and things like that.
You just like so I could play winter or I could play football in the fall, and then, you know, like in like 7th, 8th grade, they had like 2 winter seasons, so you could play, like I could also do wrestling and basketball.
Yeah.
But when I got to high school, you kind of have to pick one of those. Sure. So I didn't go basketball, but I would say kind of I developed kind of physically pretty early, and started adding on a lot of muscle. Probably like I would say probably from going 6th to 7th grade, there was if you look at my school pictures and just I kind of remember the time, like I started really mature like in 7th grade and kind of lose some of that baby fat and really develop some muscle and stuff. So
did you notice it when you were playing football like that?
Yeah, there's some pictures back then just kind of from vacation, just random stuff. I just kind of noticed. Like I could just, even my school pictures where it was like, I feel like in 5th, 6th grade, I looked a little like fuller and chubbier, and then I kind of leaned. You know, you just like your face looks different. Yep. Like you know, you're getting facial hair and stuff like that. So I think I just started to excel at sports. It was naturally kind of gifted, and just being pretty athletic and pretty strong early, and had some of those physical traits that.
Did you weight train at all?
Yeah, and I started to really, you know, get into like whenever I could, even just stuff at the house or even using the weight room at school, like probably by 7th grade. Okay. You know, outside of sports, doing some stuff of my own, just taking that a little more seriously and just seeing how it would probably contribute and help out with athletics and things like that. And it just, you're getting at that age where you're kind of looking in the mirror, like, oh, you're, what's going on? You know, just like, it's just kind of fun to kind of explore, you know, doing physical things at that time. So, yeah, by the time I got into high school, I was playing football, basketball, and then lacrosse as well. So those are the 3 sports I did.
What's the when is lacrosse in the spring?
It's a spring sport, yeah. So I did some track like early on, and I did some of the throwing events like shot put and discus and kind of shorter sprints, like some 4x1s and 200s. And I really like track. I just think like team sports and ball sports and field sports like that, it just were fun. And lacrosse was really fun. It had always been like a really big Atlantic or like Northeast sport for a long time. But in our school district, I mean, in our area, it was popular for a long time, but our school district compared to the area got it kind of later. So we kind of developed like a youth program first. And then as that was coming up, it was really developing into a pretty strong program. So I continued to play with that. And it was fun. You just being like a physical athlete. I think it was not the same as football, like, but it was a pretty like,
it's kind of a rough sport, isn't it?
It can be, right? Yeah. I think it's like hockey where there's a ton of skill involved.
Yep.
You know what I mean? As far as like catching and throwing and stick skills and like being able to control the ball. But there is a sense of too, like you can, even with the most basic skills of the ball, like you can be pretty physical if you can. You know, I was a running back, so kind of with a ball in lacrosse, I was kind of a running back. I just kind of outran people.
Grabbed it and just took off.
Yeah, my coach was also one of our football coaches. He was a great lacrosse player, and he was kind of our strength coach too. So he was like, don't mess around with trying to be like really good and super technical. Like, you just run him over. So he's like, just bull dodge him, just get past him, you know, have the basics. And, you know, that was fun.
Did you play that through high school?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I wasn't probably like really, it wasn't a focus of mine to like potentially play in college. But when I got to college, I wasn't playing more. I missed playing it.
Okay,
I wish
cool.
It was one of those things like had I had the opportunity to start earlier, it would have been fun to see where that went. But it wasn't a huge priority of mine. It wasn't like I was a massive college recruit for lacrosse, but it's a fun sport. I would encourage for young kids to try it out or explore.
You're running a lot. It's kind of like soccer where
is.
you're in constant motion and like your legs have to be strong.
It's like interval sprinting. There's times you're going to kind of, run back and forth, especially like, I mean, even the positions are similar. Like I was a midi, so I played offense and defense. So you're just kind of like running up and down the field and stopping and starting and stuff. So it was very good. Basketball is the same way. It's like it provided some year-round conditioning and teamwork and just kind of maintaining like, those skills, and it was kind of nice after football to kind of have a break and just kind of develop like some winter endurance and things like that. And you talk about kids these days specializing in sports really early. I mean, all of us here probably played a million things growing up, like I did, and then even as a pretty successful high school player in one particular sport, I was still playing 3 just because I mean, sit a season out. Are you kidding me?
I think it's so healthy though too. I mean, we're just talking about this like we just went to Oscar's school today and just how much pressure there is on kids, and then like, oh, you're good at basketball. All right, we go all in on basketball. We're playing all year round, or baseball all year round, and then kids they get burnt out after like a year or two.
Yeah, I think there's a mental and emotional aspect of that where as a young kid, especially if you're pretty good, and there's a lot of pressure put on you, externally, and then you start to feel that yourself. And a lot of kids, like physically, they'll just get burned out. I mean, a lot of physical therapists and doctors are seeing like really bad overuse injuries from like year-round training. And we're talking about baseball with the arms and shoulders and elbows. But like any sport that you practice year-round too intensely at an age like that, it just you're risking like physical and mental burnout. I mean, you may fit a couple through that funnel. You just don't break them down. They end up being Tiger Woods. But most of these kids are not. I mean, if you look at the statistics of kids that become elite college players or even professional players or world-class athletes, it's so small.
Yeah,
so
I just
small.
don't
And
understand.
I don't want to discourage people from trying that, but you're risking a lot of that person's well-being to do that.
I think it's like what you have to do. You have to excel like that to get into a good school now. Like it's gotten so competitive with college.
It's just they think they're going to fall behind. They think they're keeping up with the Jones, especially if other people are doing that. Like, I've got the resources. I got to get my kid to see. I've got to spend $50,000 on my kid to be, the next LeBron James.
That's what's created those places like IMG and stuff like that.
It is. It's kind of a racket. It's an industry, and they're taking advantage of people. Again, it's not to be negative and say people can't do that, but at some point, you are not going to like.
You're doing your.
You're not going to outtrain your genetics to some extent.
Yeah.
What did I see? It was a really funny Instagram post. This guy was like, where I grew up, like, he's just talking about baseball. He's like, everyone played. He's like, you just hoped you had 2 or 3 good kids, and like everyone had to play for some reason. And it was like a satirical, funny thing, but he was just like, and there was no travel. There was just like the kids in your neighborhood, and everyone played, and he just like went on and on about it. He was like, it was like something that people wouldn't understand now. Yeah. And he's like a guy probably about our age, and he's just like, yeah, everyone played. He's like, 3 of these kids they had no interest in playing. He's like, but everyone played, and you just played baseball until you were 12, and like that's just what you did. And
but on the upside of it, we've gotten a lot smarter about training and sports science and sports physiology. Like, we're creating very good athletes now.
Absolutely.
And probably ones that are maintaining health for longer, but we don't need to push that on an 11, 12-year-old just yet.
No.
I feel like we're like all these things that we're doing, like we're, maybe as a society, we're living longer. Like, our life expectancy, whatever it's raised over the last 50 years, but we're sadder. I feel like we're all less happy. And this is coming off of a week, and I know you didn't want me to talk about this, but there was a suicide in Up Arlington this week. Yeah. And this is the second one this year, school year. Mm-hmm. And it freaks me out. I mean, it just makes me so scared. Mainly, I worry about my son. I think you worry about him too. He's just a real sensitive kid, and there's so much pressure on kids for to be. And Oscar's a really sweet, really nice kid, and I just actually started training him and his little friends. He's not going to have it like that. He just doesn't. And I think he's always known that. And I see him, and he's looking at his friends, and he's doing burpees, and he wants to train with these boys. And God bless him, because he wants to push himself. But he chose the 2 kids on our street that are especially this kid Hudson. I mean, he's just so athletic and smart and driven and understands his body. And I'm like, buddy, you can't compare yourself to kids. You can't do that. It's going to make you feel horrible. And I can't help but think, in this community that's supposed to be the best community, is the common denominator not a ton of pressure on these kids? And why? What are we doing? Why? What's the point?
Well, we'll talk about it. It's over optimization and over the hustle culture and all of that, where it's you're doing all these things, and they're meant to they do help, and they make you better and this and that, but then you start to overcomplicate it with a million rituals and a million things that you need to do, and then you're not, at some point you're just
not happy.
Yeah, it starts to destroy your mental health, and you're not having fun. And that's a big part of it, is finding a way to keep having fun.
I was annoying the kids last night. I was kind of being stupid. I was being silly, but I was like, I just turned 45, and they're like, Mom, you don't look 45. I was like, you guys want to know what I do in a day to look younger? And it's all these stupid creams I put on, and I do red light therapy, and I do my boots, and then I'll get Botox every now and then. And now I'm shocking my face with muscular stimulators to make it look younger. And Oscar's like, Mom, that's enough. And I'm like, I'm not done. Dude, I've only been talking for 2 minutes. But I think if you can't go and you can't have fun, then what's the point of all that? Because it'll make you crazy. Sure. I will make myself crazy if I keep doing that, spinning around every day.
For sure.
Sorry, not to get off on
Well, no, I mean, so, Dave, and what I've seen, I think it was Urban Meyer said something about most of the guys on the Ohio State football team, they were 2 or 3 sport athletes. They played a lot of different things. So specialization wasn't necessarily, I think it was some percentage, 80% of these guys. Now that can be for a couple of reasons. These guys just popped out of the womb like poetry in motion, and they can play, Deion Sanders style. They can just play a lot of stuff. Or I think there's a little bit of both. Also, from hearing your sports background and seeing how you move, it's this cross-training effect, and just being overall, your base is so big, maybe at one point someone who does all of these things isn't quite as refined in a certain way, they don't run maybe as, but their base is so big, it's this guy can go way farther if we just teach him a few things than someone who is
Well, it just sounds like your family was super active. Your parents, your all your siblings, that was just your baseline. Where if you just even compare, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but my family, we grew up in the country. No one did anything. And like, I mean, we grew up on a farm, but we were lazy kids. You know, we just didn't. So I looked crazy if I went out for like a 20-minute run on my dirt road. Like people would roll down their window and be like, what are you doing? And it's just, and it's cool. Like you just are a product of your environment a little bit. Like,
I feel like, we just, I mean, like I said, I grew up in a neighborhood. There was just tons of, like every house had a kid, you know, or a family of a few kids around my age or my brother and sister's age. So it was, you get home from school. Like obviously when I was older, you probably have to do more homework and things like that. But I mean, in general, you're always kind of hanging out with friends if I'm not at practice or just kind of running around the neighborhood, things like that.
Go play driveway basketball.
Or like pick up football, basketball, like any sport, like, you know, baseball or whatever, you know, kickball. I mean, we had like a little like cul-de-sac circle that we would just play every sport in and things like that. It was just fun. There wasn't a ton of pressure, like to, you know, be amazing at that stuff. I mean, and obviously I was always pretty, you know, by the time like I even got to high school before, like I had a pretty driven personality when it came to sports. I was pretty, and this wasn't self-imposed from like, or imposed from like my parents or anyone. I just kind of naturally put a ton of pressure on myself because I felt like I was doing pretty well, and I just became kind of a perfectionist with things. So I was like pretty driven in kind of a bad way. I think like definitely through high school and college. I mean, if I knew more at the time about myself and it was probably a different era, I probably would have like sought out a sports psychologist. I was way too hard on myself to the point where it was like not helpful towards me or towards like my production on the field, especially with football. Like when you know that you're kind of becoming quote unquote, like a star at it, like you're doing really well. And like, this could be something that could lead to some opportunities in college. Like I just was, you know, any mistake I made, it was just unacceptable type of thing. And like that, I don't know where that came from. You beat
yourself up a lot.
It was bad.
Like
it was
if you had a less than perfect game, it was just like the end of the world.
You could have had a great game, but if you missed one tackle or fucked up one time, it was like kind of, that was just, it would linger in your mind for sometimes like too long. Like you got to have a very short memory. Like really, really good people or good athletes or successful people, like especially when it's crunch time. I mean, you can look at the tape later and you can go over stuff and try to make improvements, but in the moment, have a very short memory. Like it's not going to be helpful. And a lot of times I just couldn't let that stuff go.
I know what you mean.
But, you know, I just started, like I said, you know, got excelled at sports, was pretty good through high school. You know, I enjoyed like art and like some subjects in school, did well in school, you know, good enough that like it set me up for an opportunity. Like if I wanted to go to a school, like it wasn't going to be an issue of like not getting in. Right. So I always thought academics were just important and just do my work and stay pretty disciplined. You know, had fun in high school, but wasn't really like super into partying. Like I just didn't want to put, you know, the other sports and things I was interested in, like
in jeopardy,
at risk or in jeopardy because, you know, we had like contracts to sign and things like that. I would like,
you'll lose half your season if you get
I was
caught
a pretty
with a
good
beer.
kid, but I would, you know, go out with friends now and again towards later in high school and then go to parties and things like that. But I was never going to be too risky about stuff. I had a pretty good head on my shoulders and kind of saw some mistakes other people made. And so I didn't want to mess things up too much. So, and I took, you know, as the more I got into high school, I took training more seriously. I mean, some of the weight rooms that now that you have, I'm sure at UA, like Worthington, some of the schools around here, I mean, they're better than my college weight room. They're so good. And you probably have, at least for some programs, some decent strength coaches there. People who know what they're doing.
They're getting good now.
I mean, we just kind of rust the old equipment and we did what we could. And, you know, but I was trying to physically develop myself. I mean, I wasn't super big. I was, 5'11", probably at most. I probably graduated maybe 195, 200.
Do you remember the like programming that you guys were instructed to do in high school at all? Can you remember like was it like
I think we may have like touched on some power cleans a little bit, but not a ton. Just your basic kind of bench squatting, like your powerlifting stuff, you know, and a little bit of accessory things.
How often would you guys do that?
Like summer was kind of a big time for that because we weren't
for football.
we weren't in season, so it was kind of like leading up into the season. And like during season, it's kind of maintenance lifts, maybe like 2 days a week, things like that. I mean, I think like, you know, like as far as like basketball and lacrosse, like you just kind of splayed your sport at the time. Maybe it's different these days in some different programs, but like if you wanted to work out, like you kind of just did it on your own. There might be like 1 day a week where, all right, we're going to have a weight room day.
Sure.
But it wasn't really part of your program. When you get to like college or maybe a more sophisticated or like, you know, like I said, more programs now in high school may have a year-round strength training program. Like I trained Matt, like his daughter's swimming in UA. Like they have dedicated like lifting times and things like that. We'd never really had too much structured time outside of practice. I mean, that coach was too busy enough just to like coaching you in your sport.
Yeah.
There wasn't a ton of time outside that to like lift on your own. So I kind of just did it on my own. Just
they have
to
fully staffed like strength and conditioning coaches in high schools now. That was a big thing for me coming out of school. That was actually a job. I kind of wanted that job more than a teaching job, like trying to get into one of those because I had student taught and I hung out at
Those
in
jobs
New
are
Albany.
hard to get. Even as a high school, because I wanted to do that.
They
too,
churn
but
them too.
Yeah.
They churn those guys, so it's not a safe job either.
It's a thankless job. We're in a thankless field.
Yeah, so I mean, if the teams aren't doing well, or you get a new football coach or something, like they're gonna bring in like their guy or whatever it is.
Everybody's gonna analyze everything you do.
How about in college? How was your strength and conditioning program like with the weights and all of that? Like, did that take it up a notch? Like when you went to school?
Yeah, we would have, some guys stay. It wasn't Ohio State, so most of the guys went home for the summer, trained on their own, things like that. I mean, a couple of people stayed, but again, it's if I had went to school in a place like Columbus, I might want to stay here as a bigger city, like Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, where Bucknell was. It's a tiny town.
Yeah.
I don't want to stay there. Over
Did you
the
get a
summer.
full ride for football, or was it like a dual scholarship? Or
So that league, Bucknell's in the Patriot League, they don't offer any. It's like it's kind of like the Ivy League. They don't offer sports scholarships, so you can get. It's just a league rule.
yeah.
So it makes it hard it's basically one AA, but it makes it really hard to kind of compete on a national level with like, say like a South Dakota State or like some of the schools you'll see, the one AA schools you'll see in the national championship or playoffs, like they have 60 something full scholarship players on the team without the academic standards. Then you have Bucknell in the league, which is like, you got to have a decent amount of GPA and scores to get in there. And then they just don't offer scholarships.
They find some ways
They'll
to get
find
you
ways
money,
to get you
right?
money. So there's like financial aid. They can get like a merit-based scholarships, things like that.
Okay.
So, I did get some money to go there, but it wasn't just like, hey, you got your free ticket for 4 years.
Yeah. Free food, room and board and all that. They find ways to help you out. Like they offer,
But sometimes it is a little bit, if you get someone that's like, a high-level athlete that maybe just was like maybe like a 1 or 2 star recruit that couldn't go like to Ohio State or like a 1A school, they could go to a 1AA school and, if they're like a C student, they get a full scholarship, go there, and they'll have a great career. And that program will probably be more successful in the long run. And when I was there, actually, I think my senior year, Colgate in our league went to the national championship. They played Delaware, but that's super rare.
Yeah.
But the program wise, we would have like summer conditioning. They would give us our stuff, and usually there was like kind of more of a muscle building hypertrophy phase, a kind of more of a power phase. Like usually it periodized to like the point of the season, like right before the season, where you get into like kind of maxing things out, like doing more explosive lifts. We didn't do any snatching in college, but we did power cleans, things like that. Your classic squats, deadlifts, bench, and your accessory stuff, and unilateral work. And in season, we lifted probably like twice a week, maybe. Just maintenance stuff.
Kind of like dynamic days.
Yeah, you're kind of already getting the shit kicked out of you enough. It's more about recovery and just maintaining some almost injury prevention type of lifting.
Yeah.
We would do it like once or twice during the week, and then Sundays, like we would have games on Saturdays. On Sundays, we would come in, do like film for a few hours, and we would always have like a little bit of running, and we'd have almost like body weight workouts. We'd partner up with people and do some body weight conditioning things, like some banded work, stuff like that. It's not real hard in the body, but you almost want to like get a good exercise in, get a good run in, lift in, almost to kind of flush out your body from just being, beat up the previous day.
Yep.
And you gained a lot of muscle in college, right?
Oh yeah, I mean you're just kind of like you're eating as much as you can.
He was huge. He was jacked. I mean,
probably.
I want to put up a picture of him in college compared to
the
now.
dude didn't have a neck. I've seen pictures.
I have like we didn't have smartphone. We barely had a cell phone at the time. There's no pictures anywhere.
Aww.
Like, I mean, I have a few, but like
it's not many. But the ones I've seen, I'm like, he's
I'm
big
like
now,
maybe
but
205 now. I was 230 at the same height.
Wow.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, like everything was just thicker. My legs thicker, my neck was out there. Everything was just bigger.
Did they tell you like how to eat to gain weight like that? They're just like eat a ton.
Here, time out real quick. So, and because I have something I want to piggyback after that I was reading, I was geeking out on. So yeah, you went from say 195, 200 up to like 230, 235,
by my senior year.
Gained 30 pounds throughout that time. So, I mean, you weren't a skinny kid, coming in there, and you packed on that weight. And
at some point that, like, depending on your position and what you have to do, like there is an ideal size probably in your height and frame and what it's capable of doing, right? I could add more and be a little bit harder to move defensively or as a linebacker, but I'm going to kind of lose a lot of athletic ability to be able to move in space and things like that, especially if I came in and I was an interior linebacker, and then the last 2 years I moved to outside, which is just covering a lot more ground, like covering receivers more, just being in space. So it's just like I mean, whether I did it intentionally or not, I wasn't trying to get like super thick. Like I wasn't a nose guard by any means.
Yeah.
So
you had to be able to move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do things I probably hadn't done before, like dropping back, and just it was different. So I definitely didn't want to like be. So even if it was lean mass, there's a point you still have to move around that weight. Yeah. So like you still have to be nimble enough on your feet for your position or whatever you're asked to do, that you can't be too large for your frame.
There was a post I saw was really interesting. It was a guy, and I just started nerding out on it. This baseball player, they're getting ready for like spring training, and he's an outfielder, and he's gained 40 pounds in the off season, but he's a big dude. He's probably 6'3". He has a frame. He doesn't look bad. He looks like he's probably a little slow. And so it was like this strength and conditioning coach was like talking about it. And it's not like steroids. I mean, like he just like lifted and obviously did it. And they're like, this isn't a bad thing for baseball, where you were talking about having like, 2 workouts a week where you're just trying to maintain. Baseball has a season that goes, they start doing spring training soon, and then they end in like October, and it's like you can't hit the weight room that hard. Like you're traveling around the country for 6 straight months in buses and planes. So they're like, this is probably kind of a smart thing, because by July, like you're hanging on by a thread, your joints are getting banged up. It's a grind of a season. So getting big like that, getting to 235 to get through that football season, you probably are losing some of that. Were you losing some of that size through the season at all, do you think? Were you eating to keep it on?
You're just kind of maintaining.
Yeah.
Again, you didn't think too much about it. I think
Sure.
as we were talking about, like, you asked, like, was there any conversation about, like, were you taught any nutrition advice, things like that? And there's probably some. Am I recalling anything specific? No. But I think, if the coaching staff or if our strength coaches noticed that, hey, your numbers in your sprint time, like a lot of times we would test stuff in the spring or the winter a little bit, or winter conditioning, or especially come preseason, you come in and we'd have all sorts of testing benchmarks to meet coming in. Like, did you do your winter or your summer conditioning and lifting? Because if not, it's going to show here. So if you were kind of slacking in your literal performance numbers or your play in the field, there was going to be a conversation had about that. Like, are you doing what you're supposed to? Are you working hard, but like, are you just overweight? Like, that was never a conversation for me specifically, but maybe if there were some players that, like, hey, you're getting old chubby, you're out of breath doing all this stuff like that.
Sure.
We need to figure out a game plan. And there was probably some players that kind of had to do that from time to time, but it was kind of a case by case situation. At that time, though, like, you're so busy, and generally, like, especially within season or like spring, and most guys are fairly disciplined. You can kind of eat whatever you want. I don't say eat whatever you want, but like, I mean, you're young and you've got a ton of muscle and you're a good athlete. Like, you're just burning a lot.
Yeah, you're piling calories on.
Yeah.
A pizza's not putting a dent in you, We had a nice cafeteria and stuff, and like, I just generally tried to eat pretty sensibly, like I had kind of growing up, and but didn't overanalyze it too much. Sure.
Like, just a healthy mindset of just, make sure you get some protein in. And, I generally enjoy almost any food that's put in front of me. So just make sure you're getting your vegetables and fruits and just eating sensibly. And, at the time, like I said, you're lifting heavier and you're just eating more. And like, you need to be fairly big to shed off linemen and things like that. Yeah. So it just kind of naturally happened when I went from high school to college. I was going to put on a little bit of weight, and it was fairly lean and stuff like that. So
now you've had 20 years.
How old are you, Dave?
Then. Why am I still doing agility drills in the gym? Let's get to that. I mean,
well, no. Yeah. I mean, I think we will get to that. So, I mean, there's a transition. By the time, not too long after that is when, 2009 is when I'm running into you, late in
What year did you graduate college?
05.
Yeah. So just a few years after that, and you were still big. You were probably around 215.
Yeah.
But leaner than hell.
Yeah. I mean,
too.
I think by the time after my last season, I had one more semester, we end basically in late fall, my senior year in 2004, I'm a done being a college athlete. I'm not playing any sports anymore. And I kind of just was still working out on campus and just kind of probably just got into like jogging and running a little bit just for fun here and there. And just even, I think, without even realizing it or knowing it, I just remember my coach just seeing him in the spring one time when I was kind of running around and we would just kind of go to the weight room in the football facility too. And he was like, "You're losing weight, your face looks a lot thinner." Just immediately if you stop playing, you kind of just start shedding that weight. And I wasn't even like a huge guy, but I mean, I would see a couple of my teammates that were linemen a year or two after they graduate, they just started to shrink back to kind of normal size people.
Yeah.
Not like tiny, but you like, you're not you don't have to block anyone anymore.
Yep.
Like you're just getting back to more of a healthy weight, for your size, in your 20s still, but like, I don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah, you're not trying to power lift 500 pounds.
And again, I wasn't that big, but I mean, there's some guys that play over 300 pounds. It can't be comfortable just to exist like that all the time. So I think naturally people were just kind of losing weight, just, not eating as much. Like when you don't, it's one of those things like the more that's asked of you physically, the more you start eating. So when you start doing less, you don't eat as much. So naturally you just kind of come down in size.
I think you have a really good intuition with your body. And I think that's to me, that's so cool to watch you over so many years stay in good shape. And that's the one thing I hear from every client. Like Dave has a client that he's working with. I can't remember exactly how old Mark is, but he has some heart issues and Mark just loves you. And then you have like younger clients and you're just very intuitive with people, but you're very intuitive with yourself. And it's cool that you're like, oh, I just naturally did this. But I talked to so many people on the flip side of that. Hey, I was a football player and just kept eating like a football player.
Yeah,
and here I am.
Yeah.
Now I'm just a fat ass. Like, so you just have this like internal governor and it's really neat. And that's part of like why I wanted to have you on the podcast, and Brandon absolutely did too. He's like, you're right. Like, I don't think you give yourself credit. Like you really do a good job of like keeping yourself in check over so many years, being consistent, disciplined. And it's really cool to see. It's inspiring and it's fun to be around.
Doing it in a creative way. So like, what I've seen, so you had your football career and then
next couple of years, just kind of like running a little bit.
Yeah,
lifting,
you had a good endurance. Like you seemed like you had been into running when you kind of came to the Rogue when we were there. Like you had a good running endurance.
Did you do any halves or fulls or just
later?
Yeah,
on.
Okay.
Within the last 10 years, it just.
But he was a good runner when he came, and I could tell he had been doing that over the last few years. And then he had a pretty intense, like hardcore CrossFit career that was. With the intent on making noise and trying to like win the CrossFit games. It wasn't like, like, oh, I'm just going to kind of like try and compete. Like Dave took it super seriously and made some noise in it. He was getting second at the sectionals and at the Arnold. Like he was banging around with the top guys in the world. And so that takes like, you have to get so good at strength and conditioning. Like you're white knuckling it. And then I've seen him transition from that to maintaining all these like athletic qualities that he has. And still, now you're getting 25, 30 years into strength and conditioning and trying to still keep your mind stimulated and
that's the biggest part.
That's what I was going to say. You do a really good job about that. Like
some days it's fun, but it's like half the time it's just like eating your vegetables now. It's not I don't. It is what it is. Like I'm gonna always work out, and sometimes I'll take a break for a little bit. But like you do, it's almost automatic. It's just like you get up and you're like, my identity is like moving and exercising. Like that becomes part of your identity. It's not really a choice anymore. It's like who you are, what you do. It's part of your life, even though you're like, this is not really that exciting anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm like, here I am. This is what I'm doing. And like that is not to be like pessimistic about it or just kind of, but like sometimes if you don't have something you're training for, you want to say deeply invested in, but like, I don't know, some days it's fun And some days, like, you're just like, I really don't want to do this right now.
I can tell you I can see the days it's fun for you when, like.
But it's like that for everyone.
So he was doing those. He was doing those agility drills. Like I could tell you were having a good time doing that.
That's the shit I'd rather do than just like squatting and lifting weight and do stuff like going on a trail run or just running sprints or doing something athletic where you're just moving in space.
Yeah.
Like pushing weight around or pulling weight around, doing like that is fun. I guess like it builds your body and gives you, power and strength and all that stuff like that. But like, I actually like doing the drills that stuff that I used to use that would translate more to athletics, like moving in space and doing that stuff. It's, like cone drills or agility stuff or sprints or just like hill runs, things like that, where you're actually using the physical qualities that you build from the weights and things you do in the weight room. You're applying it to some other to some other kind of like sport or endeavor. I think
you're the reason why we have to run the hill in Puerto Rico now, because you guys went down and
right by your
Brandon's like,
place.
Dave ran the whole hill. And I'm like,
we do it all the time. Yeah.
We do it.
It's very steep and short. It's perfect.
It is.
We were talking about that too. Like, if anyone is interested in kind of getting into like sprinting or running fast or things like that, and maybe you have some running experience or maybe you don't, like, hills are probably the safest way to sprint.
Yeah.
It's going to feel difficult and hard, but like running on a flat ground is very intense. It's very difficult. It's a lot of impact on your joints and body, but you're not going to have that impact going uphill, and you won't reach the speeds that you're going to like risk, pulling a hamstring or things like that.
Right.
Those injuries just don't happen. You can try as hard as you can, but I would opt for more uphill running for most people. Develops a ton of leg power, and it's actually a lower risk of injury than running.
100%.
I know. People don't think that though. They always think it's like, because it's more energy output, like the step mill, like, oh, that's gonna. I'm like, no, man, you can climb stairs all day. It's so easy on your body. But
running flat or even like sprinting, we would sometimes
slight graded down,
slight downhill. That where you're moving faster than you. Yeah, it hurts so bad. I mean, we did in college sometimes, and I've actually done it recently a few times. That's probably the only few times where I'm like, ooh, my hamstrings are talking to me now, because you're moving so much faster than you naturally can. It's good, and sometimes you just have to watch it. But I just there's that guy that we kind of, I had mentioned like last year, Judd that does a lot of that athletic stuff, and just some he's I like that guy a lot, because I'm like, I kind of like his mindset. He was kind of he was an Army Ranger. He was like a former football player. But just in general, his mindset of like, I'm older. Like, I've got all this muscle. I've built stuff for a long time. I've done the basic movement patterns forever, and I still do them. But the things I'm more interested in now are maintaining and sustaining my athletic ability and just moving in space better and feeling good. Because you can still stick to the same old stuff you've been doing, but your body doesn't respond to it that well anymore. And I'm kind of at that age now where it's like, I can still push stuff around, but I kind of just have to mentally, to stay with it, I kind of have to switch things up and just do some things that aren't maybe like traditional basic lifts that most people should probably do 80-90% of the time and have that really good foundation. But when you've kind of done that for a long time, or if you're a little older and kind of beat up from stuff, just doing some different movement patterns, even if it's not like feels like it's the heaviest weight or or that impressive. Just doing some of that stuff, like, it's just really good for your body. And
that's smart, because that's what you lose as you age. Like, if I'm watching like my group that I train, and I've got Brandon's parents in there now, but they're all a little older. And that's like, when you go to move like laterally or that's what you lose. You lose your balance. And so I'll make them all do like little balance, like stretching at the end. They get so mad at me, but that's what I think is really important for us.
There's a lot of older jack dudes. There's not a lot of older guys who can move.
Yeah, like and it doesn't. You don't have to do a ton of it. I mean, stick to the basics are there for a reason, and if you can do 80% of your lifting in some of those foundational movement patterns and lifts, but spending a little bit of time, even if it's just a couple days a week or part of your warm up, just doing some rotational stuff, some lateral movements, and if you want to get into some agility things, like, I mean, it's more about the quality of those movements, not doing a ton of it. Right? If I spend an hour doing agility drills and cone drills now, my joints would hurt.
Oh yeah,
I'd be fine maybe in the moment, but like the next, I'd be hurting for a while.
You'll pay
so just small amount of reps, just small amount of sets of those, like high quality, lots of rest between, and just being very precise with that stuff, and just doing that more often. I think there was a time during CrossFit where I was focused on that as a sport, and there's really not that much involved in that. Maybe getting from point A to like in a workout, like, but there's not much like sprinting and agility and all these like maybe other athletic traits that or skills that I used to do involved in CrossFit specifically. So when I got done with that, I was like, I want to try to focus on trying to maintain that for as long as I can. Right, that's the stuff I always liked doing. So trying to just maintain.
It's probably really good for you neurologically, because I'm really into that right now, just like cognitive function with where I'm at, kind of going through like perimenopause. I feel like it starts to decline, and like how can I keep some of that,
I mean, even if there's sometimes people to offer, if I see some stuff online or if someone, these different kind of movement guru type of people, that have, whether it's some form of like, kind of like the Ido Portal stuff, like where it's just like, can I get out of the normal way I'm moving and try to like learn new skills? It's like part gymnastics, part dancing or something like, and I've kind of tried some of this stuff over the years or done it. I'm kind of doing something now like that where I'll do it a few days a week. And it's definitely things you have to practice at. It seems like maybe 10 or 15 years ago, it wouldn't have been that hard to move that way. But now you're just like, man, I've stiffened up a lot. Like if I go outside the normal range of motion I don't normally go, like my joints are like, oh, we haven't been there in a long time.
Yep.
And that kind of is like, it's not scary, but it kind of is a little shock to my system. Like, man, holy shit. Yeah. Like you've not let yourself go by any means, but you're like, oh man, you kind of need to touch some things now and again that you don't normally do. So like, I like lifting weights, but it's just kind of, it's a little boring these days. Yeah. And I just do it just for maintenance and kind of just to kind of maintain muscle and the same general physique I've had, for a while, but trying to tap into some other different things and like doing some of the agility drills or, some of the plyos, stuff like that. Again, I'm not going to do as much as I used to do because it just like, it's a little bit harder on my body than it used to be. But just if you don't use it, you lose it type of thing. And that goes for a lot of stuff physically. So
the full movement patterns, though, I just see you doing, like you're using the cables in a lot of different ways. You are using GHD. You're doing such a variety of things.
I'm not going to go full, like if people out there know what kind of like, the functional pattern stuff and all that controversy in that space of like, no, you still want to do like heavy resistance training, doing things that your body tolerates. But, a little bit of that weird, quirky stuff, so to speak, can really be a really good counterbalance and antidote to some of the toll the other kind of movements take on your body.
I think mentally it helps too. It keeps things, novelty is such a big part of training. And if you get that novelty, it keeps you wanting to come back and you're like kind of excited about doing it.
I mean, maybe it's a guy's thing or like, you kind of like you're always playing a little bit of numbers game. I'm trying to maintain my bench here, my squat this or there. But like, honestly, the more kind of weirder of like, out of perfect alignment I do lifts, like if it's a unilateral thing or like some kind of rotation thing or like, it's hard to make up stuff on the spot, but like anything where it's not out of an optimal alignment type of position, my body actually likes that better.
Yeah.
If you put me into some bilateral fixed position lift, I actually get really creaky and achy after those things because you can lift so much with them. Like just a straight up deadlift or a squat. I mean, I can push the numbers on that, but I just start to feel like crap. Where if I start doing some lunges or some rotational stuff or, something that is like, maybe I'm going to do a squat where like one foot's on a plate and one's on the ground. And I'm going to squat down, I'm going to lean to that one side and just overload that. Like, I'm not going to max that out, but if I can do have heavy sets and do that, like where everything's not in a perfect alignment, but like most of life is not in perfect alignment. Most of the time outside the gym,
that's how people get hurt. I was moving something.
You're in weird positions. You're not perfectly aligned. Your spine's around this or that way, the other. So like kind of in using some of those positions in a safe way in training and loading them up, like I think it makes you very resilient to most of physical stresses of life rather than doing these like really perfect lifts all the time. But it's taken a long time to kind of figure that out. And sometimes it's just like, that's the stage of life you're in.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
Well, no, I think it's really cool. Like all of the stuff that you're doing. And I always get inspired by it. And I'm like, I'll watch what you're doing in the gym. I'm like, I'm going to try that. Or I might ask him how he set those cones up again. When I initially got into training, we're doing a lot of that stuff with kids. And I learned how to do it.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Set up the cones in any shape you want. Like literally novelty is the best thing about that. Like set up a pattern, just like make something up. Like you just almost just like test new things all the time. Like don't do it all. I mean, you can test like the pro agility test or the L drill, like maybe now and again to like, if you want to just like repeat something and see if you
get
can
a time or
improve it, but just general maintenance and like retaining agility and like change of direction, speed, or just doing stuff like you said that's mentally stimulating. Like change it up.
Yeah, that's great
You're
advice.
not getting ready for the combine. You're just trying to move in space a little bit better and challenge yourself in ways that you don't normally move. So.
Yep. Oh, this is good stuff, man. This has been a fun one. Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
All right.
See you guys.
Yep. That was awesome.